Hello and welcome. My name is Caycee and I am here with you today to record the first video in a series of videos entitled Do It Yourself Iridology. And I'm super excited to be recording this video. As the title implies, my intention with this video series is to enable, inspire, and hopefully empower anyone on their healing journey who is interested in iridology to be able to read their own eyes. So as an extension of the brain and nervous system, the eyes are constantly taking information in. And that information is being recorded in the brain and nervous system. Not only, though, are the eyes receiving information, they are also reflecting this information. So you could see the eyes as a computer monitor, and you could see your body and your physiology and your nervous system as the computer itself. So when you gain access to information that your iris is reflecting, you're actually gaining access, and you essentially have in your hand a roadmap for your healing journey. So that is my main focus, is in sharing this information with anyone who's interested so that you can feel empowered to move forward on your healing journey. All right, so today we're going to be talking about constitution and genetic heritage. And when you're looking at the eyes, there are a few factors, actually several factors, that contribute to determining what your constitution and your strengths and challenges and what you've inherited from your ancestors are, essentially. And we're going to go over those factors today. And I would like you to keep in mind that we're not looking at the Constitution in terms of black and white, as in this is a good Constitution and this is a bad Constitution. From my perspective, we are looking at Constitution essentially as a way of knowing how to go about life. So if you know you have a challenged constitution, physically speaking, you know you need to take care of yourself. And you know that if you have a very strong constitution, physically speaking, that your tendencies are going to be to just plow ahead, move through life, and not take that time to take care of yourself. So again, you're gonna see that although you don't feel it intuitively to slow down and rest, that is actually a very important thing to do. So let's go ahead and get started, and we're gonna look at several examples of different irises, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll be able to determine what type of constitution you were blessed with. All right, so we have an example of, over here, an example of a very strong constitution. We have the main factor in determining constitution would be the direction and the density of the trabecula, or the iris fibers, which we can see in this eye are very closely woven and very straight. There aren't a lot of openings or separations within the iris fibers in this eye. And a lot of times you'll hear iridologists speaking to constitution and using metaphors like the density found in different grains of wood, or the patterns found in different types of fabric. So this iris would be considered a silk type of iris, the most finely woven, the smoothest, the straightest possible fibers that one can inherit. And this iris over here is quite the opposite, you can see. So we have fibers that are not very closely woven. We have a lot of separation in the fibers, so we have actual lacuna, which are essentially openings within the iris fibers, and they are displaying inherent weaknesses or challenges found within this person's constitution. And in the next video, we're going to talk about iris topography, and we're going to go over the iris map. So suffice it to say that where you have lacuna, so depending in this eye in particular, depending on if this is a left or a right eye, this person could well have a weakness in the kidney area. So, but first off, I would like to cover constitution and then go from there into the iris mapping. Okay, so what else are we seeing in this eye? We're seeing a lot of lymphatic congestion, which you can see in this thick white, mostly in the periphery of the iris. And it almost even looks to be turning a little bit of a yellowish color up in this area in here. Lymphatic congestion isn't actually an inherited sign in the sense that you may or may not be born with lymphatic congestion, but you are, however, born with a certain level of strength in your kidneys and your lymphatic system. So if you have a lot of lymphatic congestion, that in and of itself is not necessarily a constitutional sign, but it is indicating that you could have a weakness in the kidneys and or the lymphatic system. And when you see lymphatic congestion, it's going to be appearing in different colors and different stages. So when you see the white lymphatic congestion, you're seeing that in more of an acute stage, so the beginning stage of imbalance. As it progresses, it's going to turn into more yellowing, light brown, and as it progresses into the chronic and even degenerative stages, you're going to be seeing more shades of a darker brown. All right, so some qualities that I would like to talk about in terms of constitution. When you see a person with a very strong constitution, there are certain inherent qualities that they will most likely possess, and that is a great strength and vitality, a great structural strength, structural tissue integrity, and also the ability to resist sickness and dis-ease for the most part. They have great recovery time when they do come down with anything. They have a lot of energy, a lot of drive, a lot of ambition. They are, for the most part, self-directed and able to accomplish whatever tasks that they have set in front of themselves. And that is kind of the point, is that a lot of times they are the ones to set those tasks and ambitions in front of themselves. So they can tend towards perfectionism, and they can tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves and even those around them. So how would this reflect in terms of emotional strength? Well, a lot of times people with a very strong constitution don't have quite the emotional capacity as someone who has a more open fiber weave within their iris. And a lot of times they need to watch out for, if you have a lot of energy and a lot of drive and a lot of strength, and you're able to drink whatever you want and eat whatever you want and smoke whatever you want and wake up the next morning and do it all over again. This is just a typical, stereotypical perspective on a person with an incredible constitution. So we're not always going to see this level of one extreme to the other. In fact, it's sort of unusual to see extremely strong constitution without any markings or lacuna I mean, this person doesn't even really have, they do have some inflammation going on. They do have, they're showing a bit of nervous system sensitivity in terms of the autonomic nervous system through the nerve rings. They do have a little bit of lymphatic congestion up in this area in here, but overall, I mean, this iris is pretty much perfect. So what this person might be challenged with is learning how to slow down, take care of themselves, just take the time to relax, enjoy life, and recuperate in a way that really nourishes their body and soul. So that might be a challenge, or some of the challenges that someone with a strong constitution might have. And then on the other hand, when you have a constitution that is more fragile, and you can see that just the openness in the fibers in this eye, and the openness is reflective in terms of emotional capacity, emotional sensitivity. So not only would a person who possesses less structural strength be emotionally capable, they're also extremely emotionally sensitive. So they are able to, they are empathic, let's just put it that way. They are constantly filtering out others' emotions, and their task is to really learn how to say no and to set boundaries. And the boundaries that they need to set are going to be reflected in the strength of their physical world. So the positive aspects of having this level of sensitivity and this level of fragility, I mean, there are many. So most of the time, a lot of the traits that this type of person, this type of constitution would possess would be great creativity, like I said, great emotional capacity, sensitivity, artistry. They are very creative. They are reflective rather than reactive, which would be a good keyword for the stronger constitution. They are aware of their body's messages, and one of their greatest strengths is in being tuned into their body and knowing when to say, you know what, I've had enough. I'm gonna put the fork down. I'm gonna put the glass down. I'm gonna take some rest. I'm gonna take some time for myself. And when this person is really listening, which is one of their greatest strengths, and not only just listening, but actually having the strength to express that to their outside world, they can have just as great of health as anyone, including someone with this excellent constitutional structure. All right, so let's see what else we see, and let's take a look. I don't see anything else in either of these irises that I would like to point out, so we're going to move on to a few more. Okay. All right, again, we have two very different examples of constitutional types. We have on this side very finely woven trabecula. We have, again, an almost perfect 10 out of 10 in terms of constitutional strength. There are a few very small lacuna up in this area. Nothing really standing out in terms of markings. Actually, you do see this shiny haze over the pupil, and a lot of times that can be indicating the potential for cataracts. So that would be one thing, which brings to mind, a lot of times when you see this type of strength in a constitution, you're also going to see a lot of inflammation. So the fact that you can drink and smoke and eat and do whatever you want, it just depends on who you are. But a lot of times people will take this to the extreme, really. And so you're going to see signs of inflammation before you see anything else in someone with a constitution like this. All right, so other than that, yeah, some inflammation for sure. And then, like I said, the pupil is showing that shiny haze. Okay, so, and then over here, again, we are seeing a lot of lacuna or openings in the iris. We are seeing a bit of a shininess over the pupil, not a lot. This iris is showing us a good example of an open-ended lacuna. So this type of lacuna is still receiving the nutrition from the circulatory system and having the benefits of the lymphatic system, removing its waste. Although this area is absolutely compromised, it hasn't been closed off by the body. And in this case, and in all the other cases that I've outlined, or most of them, the lacunas are closed off. And that is the body's way of protecting itself from the toxicity that is inherently found within these areas. And like I said, we're going to go over iris topography in the next video, but if this were a left eye, this would be the thigh, knee, foot area, and this would be the kidney area over here. So that's how you're going to be able to find out specifically what organs might be compromised within your body, is by looking at not only the constitution, which we're covering today, but also the signs in the iris in terms of iris topography. And then from there, we're going to go into each system. So we're going to go system by system, and we're going to cover any kind of pathologies related to each system. Now, the one positive thing about these lacuna are that you can still see the fibers within the lacuna. And so that shows that this condition hasn't reached the chronic or degenerative stages. If it had reached those stages, the lacuna would be darker inside the circle. So they would be sort of appearing like a dark brown or even a black in the degenerative stages. All right, and this eye is showing us great examples of psora spots. And psora spots are spots or colors. They seem like they are randomly distributed, but in fact, usually they are showing up in areas of significance, like certain organs or anatomical areas of significance. So psora spots are indicating areas of tissue weakness due to a toxic settlement or an encumbrance from drugs or toxins. It is an inherited sign. Although it is inherited, it's not always going to show up in the pupil or, excuse me, the iris of a newborn child. Most often, what we have seen is that psora spots are actually showing up in children. And this is according to Denny Johnson. He's one of my favorite iridologists. And he's the founder of Regenerative, and he has a different perspective on psora spots, just like he has a different perspective on most of the signs in the iris. He sees things from more of an emotional and spiritual perspective. So I love his work, and I try to include his perspective in my work. So back to the traditional psora spot. It is an inherited sign. So it's an abnormal coloration or discoloration due to inorganic substances settling in the tissues, along with chemical and enzyme processes of toxic accumulation and external environmental poisons. So psora spots can show up quite often in children from the age of 3 to 8. as a response to toxins that they have inherited. So in that sense, yes, it is absolutely inherited. But the body, usually a lot of us as young children go through these childhood illnesses. And a lot of times the illnesses, you could see it as a way of the body, as an attempt by the body to remove toxic disturbances that person has inherited. And so when the childhood illness has been suppressed through antibiotics or suppression of a fever, a lot of times these spots show up and often they show up in the areas that are sort of responsible for removing that particular toxicity. Okay, so these are psora spots, P-S-O-R-A, and they are an inherited challenge that a lot of people have. Denny Johnson, as I mentioned, of Regenerative, calls these jewels. And he refers to people who have a lot of these psora spots as jewel type of personalities. And essentially he sees them as areas of focus. All right, so this eye also has a lot of inflammation. So you can see that in the sclera, in the white part of the eye. And it also, again, we're getting out of the realm of constitution, but I'm just going to be making a quick little note of this. It also looks like, see the shimmer up in here? Looks like there is the beginning of some cholesterol plaquing. So you see cholesterol plaquing or the buildup of cholesterol in response to inflammation. Cholesterol is one of the ways that the body, one of the substances that the body produces in order to combat inflammation. And there's a lot of inflammation in this eye as well. This eye has some lymphatic tophi, so not only lymphatic congestion, they have turned into more of a yellowish, so they've progressed from acute into the more subacute stage, and they are showing up as lymphatic tophi or lymphatic clouds. And they are resulting in what we would call a lymphatic rosary, which is a sort of bead of lymphatic congestion in the periphery of the iris. Okay, let's move on. To the next set of eyes. So, although you can see incredible constitutional strength in any color eye, a lot of times the color that you see in an eye is related to toxicity, and that can be inherited. So we're going to talk about that. This eye over here has a lot of orangish, yellowish discoloration. As well, this is a great example of an eye that has lymphatic congestion that has accumulated and is in several different stages. So we have white in the acute stage of lymphatic congestion, turning into the darker yellowish of lymphatic congestion out here in this area. It hasn't gone into the brown stage yet. I'm guessing that if you knew this person, you would assume that they have hazel eyes, when in actuality, from the perspective of iridology, this is a person with blue eyes with a lot of discoloration due to lymphatic congestion, as well as I'm seeing a strong likelihood of a lot of sulfur buildup in the stomach and bowel area. So you're going to see the orangish, yellowish from a buildup of sulfur, which is usually due to prescription drugs. You can also see a discoloration such as yellow or orange or brown related to enzymatic functions of certain organs. So a lot of times when you see yellow, the kidneys have less vitality. Dark brown can indicate some liver abnormality or loss of vitality, and the orange can indicate pancreas. Because I'm seeing this in the stomach and bowel area, I'm guessing that it is a sulfur accumulation, because that is where sulfur generally resides. But overall, this person actually has a really strong constitution. Very straight iris fibers. Okay, so this iris is a great example of a constitution that's sort of mixed. I mean, they have a lot of strength in the physical structure. They also have a lot of sore spots. So this is a sore spot. This is a sore spot. A few lacuna. This one right in here, it's a small little area, but it's quite dark. When you look through the fibers, you can see this almost black, and that's a good example of an area that has gone from acute to subacute to chronic into the degenerative stages. Likewise, this whole area in here has a lot of lacuna. If this were a left eye, this would be the heart area, so we would be looking at an inherited challenge with the strength of the heart. But I'm not sure if it's a right or a left eye. This is a blue eye. And there's a lot of inflammation you can see in this little part of the sclera. You can see inflammation, you can see a skin ring. And again, inflammation and skin rings are not something that children or babies are going to necessarily be born with. Hopefully they're not, but something that they will have a tendency towards, depending on what kind of genetics that they have. Okay. All right, so like I said, in iridology, there are basically two colors. There is brown and there is blue. And when you see a green eye or an eye that looks hazel, or in the case of this eye, I mean, you would probably think that this person had a brown eye, but you can see from the nerve rings, you can see the bluish, the light color underneath all of that brown. This is a great example of an eye that is showing acute, chronic, I would say probably chronic lymphatic congestion. Chances are this person was born with this eye color, and chances are if they took on a purification or a detox protocol, they would start to see the brown lighten up. They may even see their hazel eyes turn more of a blue. That happens quite a lot with those that are doing purification and are on the raw food and the high greens and vegetables and fruit diet. So nerve rings. Nerve rings are an inherited sign, and they are showing some stress in the nervous system. You don't necessarily, if you can be prone to nerve rings and not be born with them. They have been known to show up at birth, and then they can also show up throughout the lifetime. They are essentially the nervous system's reaction to some level of stress, be it internal or external. Okay, and then over here we have, for the first time in this video, a true brown iris. And those that possess this gorgeous color are, generally speaking, those who also have a history or an ancestry of African, Native American, South American, Indian, Asian. So you're going to see these true brown eyes in those with that type of cultural genetic lineage. You're also going to notice when you do come across a true brown eye, they have more of a velvety texture. So in iridology, as I mentioned, a lot of times the fibers are compared to the grain of wood or the weave of a certain cloth. And this would actually be a velvet. So you're not even going to see the iris fibers or the trabecula. This is a very strong constitution. And one of the challenges that can be found in a true brown iris is that they do have such a strong constitution. They may progress towards imbalance or dis-ease more quietly, really similar to a person with a blue eye that possesses like a silk constitution. They're going to be going along, and then quite suddenly, unexpectedly, they could have something that has been manifesting for years and hasn't shown up just appear out of nowhere. So that's something to watch out for if you have this type of iris. The signs, if you're reading eyes and if you're interested in this, what can you discern, or you know, what information can you get from a person that does have a true brown eye? Well, although you can't see the iris fibers themselves, it's more of a velvety texture, you can quite often see the markings found in different organ areas as well as nerve rings. So you can see a bit of a nerve ring in here, and then there are a little bit, you know, a slight lacuna in this area, in this area, in this area, in there. Other than that, this looks like a very healthy eye. Okay, I think that we have covered most of what I wanted to address in this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's see. Oh yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your feedback. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and I will see you next time. Okay, take care. Bye.